Well, ready for the first panel discussion of the day, and this is my chance to play Oprah Winfrey, so except that none of you get a car. That's the only downside. It's my audition. A couple of little announcements first, but the two programs that the Premier mentioned, the Innovation Fund and the Internship Fund, we have flyers with more information on those, so if you would like to pick up a couple of those, go ahead. Also, a BlackBerry phone was found at the registration desk. If you go to claim it, they will give you an iPhone back. And the online guys tell me that when Haley was speaking, we had 300 sites tuned in online, and some of those had as many as 30 people watching at those sites, so that's great. We have so many people online. I'm not sure how many people were watching when the Premier was speaking. I'm sure it was high as well. So this is our first panel discussion of the afternoon, or the morning rather, but everybody's here with one goal: to increase the employability and persons with disabilities and the opportunities for them. But obviously many barriers still remain, and whether it's attitudes, fears of increased cost, fear of workplace accidents, or just unwillingness to accommodate people. But joining me here on the couch are employers who have had the experience. They've hired employees with disabilities, and they can tell you firsthand what positive changes it's meant for their businesses, and also the things that they've gone through, even the morale in the offices and the bottom lines. So with lessons from the field and some employer insights on hiring individuals with persons with disabilities, we welcome Lori Campbell with Enbridge. Lori. David Murphy from Tony Roma's Restaurants. Michelle Beck from ATB. And from Stantec, we have Keith Shillington. So Lori is going to lead us off. Lori Campbell has been working in the field of adult and community education since 1985 and spent many years teaching adult basic education. Today she's the manager of diversity with Enbridge Pipelines. So Lori, can you give us some of your thoughts on hiring people with disabilities?
Is this on?
It should be on, yeah.
Hi, good morning everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. I think I have probably one of the best jobs at Enbridge as manager of diversity. I lead a team of 3 people. I work in Edmonton. Enbridge is headquartered in Calgary. I work with about 3,000 colleagues in Edmonton, and I'd like to introduce you to 2 of them by a video.
I'm an Oasis coordinator, so basically what that is I look after meeting rooms, I look after conference rooms. I get to work with some really nice people that work here, and you get to know them more, you get to become friends slowly.
She goes so fast at her work.
He's a very good guy, and I don't think in his life up to this point, up till his Enbridge time, he's really gotten enough credit for what he can do.
I'll do that in a second.
One of the things that I really like about the Oasis Coordinator program at Enbridge is that it's bringing in people that are often underemployed.
Countertops, cupboards, sink. Matthew did that one today.
Yeah, I like it here. People are very nice. My boss is nice, and I made friends here.
I love working with Brianna because I think she's an inspiring friend.
She's my best friend.
My relationship with Brianna has been incredible. I know I can count on her to be there for me.
Want to help me, Matthew?
Yeah.
Diversity is about different perspectives, and the more diverse your workforce is, the more perspectives you have, the more innovation you have. And I know that Matthew and Brianna have really added to the positive atmosphere at Enbridge.
See in a bit.
Your life goes by so quickly, and everybody's in a hurry, and everybody's in a rush, and you kind of think, okay, if you're not running along beside me, you're going to get left behind, because that's what life is. And then you meet somebody like Matthew, and you realize, you know what? No, you're not going to get left behind, because everybody needs to run at their own pace.
I'm good, how about you?
Good.
Every day is a bit of a new challenge. You face the same thing, but you go through so much in a day, it's hard to believe.
See you, Matt.
See ya.
Thank you. Well, Mark, that is our Oasis Coordinator program, and we're very indebted to the Alberta Association for Community Living to bring that partnership to us, and it's been a foundational program for us to open the doors to thinking more creatively about persons with disabilities, how we can employ them, what kind of work they can do for us, and the value that they bring to us.
Great. All right, thanks very much for that, Lori. Up next is David Murphy. Dave is managing partner of Tony Roma's Restaurants, also sits on the Alberta Private Sector Employer Advisory Council, which was formed to create more employment opportunities for Albertans with disabilities. Please welcome David Murphy. David.
Thanks, Mark. I'm honored to be here today and see so many people participating in this. I think it's where we're really going to see things go. It's great to see the government on side, and I think we're going to see great success going forward with that. My story goes back about 25, 27 years ago, and as the Premier mentioned, that one person, the first person I hired, his name was Andrew Zapach. And Andrew still works for us today, 27 years later, in the store. And that shows great loyalty. He's the only person I recognize when I go back to that store as I visit. He's the only one still there from way back when that we hired. And Andrew, although he has slowed down, things have changed, we've changed the job with that time to help him to grow with the organization, like we would do with any other employee. As people get older, they do slow down, they do change their jobs. And with Andrew and with this sector, we have to do the same things. We've seen that repeat itself over and over and over now in Red Deer, where we are now. We have over 10% of our staff with disabilities, some that are quite obvious, some that aren't obvious at all. The one thing that is common with all of them that is the same is they all break through barriers that sometimes we put up in front of them. We don't mean to, but sometimes they're there. And the difference is they break through those barriers on their own. They find their way through. They help themselves to create better jobs for them, more consistency, long-term jobs, and they make themselves belong. It's not that we have to try hard to fit them in. They fit themselves in. Our staff has now become common to have them there. It's not unnatural. It's an inclusive environment. They may not be able to do the same jobs at the same pace at the same time, but the jobs we created are jobs that are needful jobs that we need in our organization. They fill them, maybe not all at the same time, at the same pace, but they fill meaningful jobs that help us create the organization that we have, the family that we developed in our restaurant. And they're a big part of our success. And without it, I don't think things have been the same. You know, the aura of the restaurant, the feeling of when you walk in, it helps what we do. And they have created that themselves, and that's the biggest pleasure that we have, is to see that we don't have to try that hard at it. They come to us through organizations, and again, the first one was Selections, was the first organization I dealt with when they first came to us in Edmonton. Kathy McDonald was the lady's name, and she opened my eyes to people with disabilities and what they could do, and the opportunity that if we gave them, what they could give back to us. And that has been proven over and over again. And again, I'm very proud of the people that we have. I'm very proud to see all the people that we have here that are going to help to grow that and to continue it. And I hope to be part of it in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thanks for that, David. And up next we have Michelle Beck with ATB Financial. Michelle is Vice President of People and Culture at ATB. And in her role, she supports ATB team members in leadership development, fosters post-secondary relations, works in diversity and inclusion, health and wellness. So, Laura, give us a sense of what ATB is doing in this area.
You bet. Thank you. It's always interesting to sit on a couch. And by the way, Laurie and I did call each other this morning and say, "Wear your black and white dress. Look good on the couch." Hi, Michelle Beck, Vice President, People and Culture at ATB Financial. We do today a variety of things at ATB, and I'm really looking forward to sharing a few things a little later in the Q&A period. But our diversity and inclusion strategy is really striking out at ATB Financial, and our mantra today is providing an environment that is very inclusive and allows every team member to bring their true self to work every day. And we're learning as an organization how to do that, and I'd like to share some things later in the Q&A with you on how we're doing that. And in order to set the stage on what I mean by that, it always starts with our CEO, Dave Mowat. Dave has been in a lot of people I see are nodding their heads. You know Dave, he's a great public speaker. I have a short snippet of a video that was taken at one of the AACL breakfasts recently, where Dave and Cody, one of our team members who came to us through AACL, have done some speaking engagements. And there's nothing more powerful than seeing a couple of minutes of Dave and Cody together, and you'll see what I mean about setting the culture. So if I could just let us run that video, that'd be great.
So Cody and I work at our head office together, and you know, one of the things that you hear people talk about people with disabilities, is they become invisible, either people kind of look away or they stare at them sometimes. And we have about 600 people that work in that building. I think Cody knows half of their names already. I always whisper over, Cody, who is that? He's supposed to know. But you know, I think that's 600 more people in the world that are a little more at ease with themselves when talking to people that aren't exactly the same as themselves. Ruth Ann mentioned Cody and I went to a football game together, and that was kind of funny because you know, I'm a really important guy. And take Cody to the game, I'll invite him and introduce him to the mayor and to the president of the football club and stuff like that. And I knew there was something different because we walked in and Cody immediately introduces me to all the cheerleaders. And then we're in the so-called VIP lounge. Cody says, come on this way. Anyway, takes me down to the alumni lounge and introduces me all to all the old players and all their wives. So one of the things that Cody works with us at head office, and I work with another person, Doris, who is a bit of a taskmaster, right? Yeah, she is. She is. But I think that's it's interesting because there's a lot of things that Cody does better than I can. As I say, remembering names, he has an amazing faculty for that. So finding the things that Cody is good at and happy at doing kind of lifts the whole place. And we have high expectations. It's not like we give him a free pass every day. If you're late, what do you get? Trouble. And the last piece is Cody is just happy every day, makes me happy, more than I can say for Paul Norris, our local vice president. I'm just kidding, Paul. Yeah. But it is a great opportunity for Cody, and I think we're in a different place. He gets along extremely well with all the people in our organization. I'm quite proud to have him there. And I think we always kind of marvel at just how well he fits in and how he kind of lifts the place up. So thank you, Cody, for all you do at ATV.
Thank you too, Lauren. I just wanted to say Bruce and is full support.
There you go, this is Cody. Thanks very much. All right, that's a pretty good demonstration of somebody who's integrated into your workforce for sure. Yeah. All right, thanks very much. And last but not least, we have Keith Shillington. Keith is Stantec's Senior Vice President of Canada Prairies and Regional Leader in Alberta North. He's also a member of the Employer Advisory Council. Stantec itself has over 1,600 employees, has employees with disabilities. And so, Keith, tell us about some of the success stories you've had.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mark. And it's an honor to be here as well. Yeah, we're a design consulting firm. And, diversity and inclusion has always been a part of our culture, but it was probably about 3 years ago that we kind of ramped up our game. And I will give another kudo to AACL. Through some personal connections of one of our managers there. We partnered up with them in their Rotary program, and they came in and helped us identify some needs in our office. Tasks that nobody had time for, but they needed to get done. And so then they helped us find the right staff. They helped us hire some staff with developmental disabilities. But what was key is they helped us find the right people. And so they came in and got the job done and are continue to be with us today. So through those early successes, that helped encourage us to continue and want to be a part of this. The other part of the aspect to our diversity and inclusion is, we have good success as well on the physical physical abilities issues as well. And it's not just the purposeful hires, it's also about existing staff who will have developmental or physical disabilities arise over the course of their employment, whether it be through just simple aging or a major event such as a stroke. So we want to keep that talent. So it's also been about us accommodating needs of existing staff to ensure that they remain a part of our company as well. But overall, there are definitely some challenges, and I think there's still a long road ahead. But the successes have certainly been great and encouraged our management teams to want to be part of this even more.
All right. Thanks for that, Keith. Now we've got 2 microphones, as you can see, and plus another roving microphone if you want to weigh in, ask a question of our panelists. And if you're online, you can ask questions in the live chat window, and we will pose your question to the panel as well. So we'll get through as many questions as possible. But we'll start it off with Michelle. What are some of the existing challenges? There are some of the barriers, I guess, you see in hiring persons with disabilities that are out there for people.
Yeah, so I can speak on behalf of maybe ATB Financial. And when we do our recruiting and our hiring, we certainly have multiple avenues to recruit individuals with disabilities, both visible and non-visible disabilities. And some of our challenges are certainly maybe teaching our recruiters to think broadly and to think inclusive. And I'm not just specifically thinking about disabilities, visible disabilities, but just broadly. So our diversity and inclusion strategy is all about having everybody with differences within our 4 walls. And how we do that is certainly through our recruiters as well as hiring through agencies and things like that. So some of our challenges are from the recruiting side forward. We have less challenges when we think about folks with disabilities, visible and non-visible, inside our 4 walls, because we're very, very focused on ensuring we have the right support system. And beyond large things, like we just moved to ATB Place down on Jasper Avenue. We moved from one side of Jasper to the other, and our new building actually doesn't have as much wheelchair capabilities as our old building. And the bathrooms are not wheelchair accessible. So those are the sorts of things that we just need to continue to improve on. Some of our branches are absolutely fabulous from that perspective, and others are not.
Mm-hmm. One question maybe for any of the panelists want to answer is, does your company have specific programs in place to recruit people with disabilities, or is it just as it comes along?
Our company itself doesn't have anything. It's just something that we just built ourselves over time. And as we do, it's not just one location doing it, it's many locations doing it in our system. But it's not something that we have that's set up, that kind of a process that we have to go through. It's just something someone walks in and we look at them as an opportunity, and we go from there.
So there's a bit of an outreach though for it in order to make it happen?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we work with the organizations to find the right people and to help us out. And once we identify a job we can create between us and maybe an organization that comes, or maybe an individual with a caregiver, we kind of work it from there and kind of work the system up.
Yeah.
At Enbridge, we have a team of 3 people that work in the diversity and inclusion area, and we have one position dedicated to this area in particular. It's our advisor of special projects. So I think that, as Michelle said, that you have to make sure that your recruitment lens is as broad as possible, and internally you don't have the barriers and biases that would prevent you from seeing talent when it appears in a form that you may not recognize. But I think you also have to be intentional with programs. So the OASIS coordinator, and I should have mentioned the OASIS is our kitchen area. I'm sure everyone thinks about their kitchen area as an oasis, but that's what we call them at Enbridge. But this is an intentional program, and it's intentional for a couple of reasons, one of which is it sort of opens the door to thinking about this within your workplace and the kind of work that we have there that's being done by people that could be done by somebody else. So I think some of it's organic, but you really have to have some agency around hiring people with disabilities.
And Keith, you guys have an inclusive committee, don't you? Something that works at a corporate level?
We do. We've, like I said earlier, D&I has always been a part of our culture, but it's actually been in the last 2 to 3 years that we wanted to formalize it more. So we actually have our corporate, and we're 14,000 employees across North America. So there's certainly the corporate initiative for D&I across the office. So we can at least have a framework to work from. Mm-hmm. Then each of the offices individually will be have their own ad hoc, a bit of what Dave talked about as well, where we'll have different champions. So it may vary from office to office to the degree that we do it, but we need to formalize it.
Mm-hmm. Once again, if you have any questions, or we have anybody online, we welcome those, or any comments you want to make as well. Feel free to do that. One thing that I've noticed when you're in a business that employs people with developmental disabilities, there seems to be a social I want to say improvement in that people are more caring because they feel like they do have to reach out to somebody with a developmental disability and be more caring socially, and it spreads to everybody. It seems to, because that's something you really can't impress upon people enough, really, when you're in a business atmosphere, to have that social cohesion. It's something that's hard to build, but with people with developmental disabilities, people seem to reach out to them, and it seems to help everybody. That's my impression, anyway. We have a question here.
So my name's Kirsten, and I work with March of Dimes Canada. This question is a little odd, but it was more directed for our political table, which unfortunately is now empty, but I'll say it anyway. So we represent people, we have an employment program, and we have other programs for people that would basically not be in the employment category. Have you ever interviewed and thus not selected, or actually hired and found it didn't work with any employees that had disabilities? And the reason I ask this is I think a lot of us sitting here in this room recognize that you know, there might be 2 or 3 where you manage to make it work, and that is a huge success, and we are really excited for that. But for those 2 or 3, there are a lot out there where maybe it doesn't work or it's not possible. So I'd really like to know your perspective on that, if that's okay.
I'd love to take that one first, if you guys don't mind. That's a great question, Kirsten. Thank you for asking. I can think of 2 examples, actually, for ATB Financial against your question. And you know, when we work with our agencies to place folks with visible and non-visible disabilities, it's difficult for the potential candidate to not get a job with ATB, but it's also very difficult for us to say no. We have said no, and most of the reason we would say no is cultural fit. We are an organization, and all of these 4 organizations you see on the couch and chairs here, we have different cultures and different ways of being. And to be that environment, Mark, that you're speaking about, all of our team members need to feel comfortable in that environment. So it really doesn't matter which person we're speaking about and their differences, it's the fit. So we have had to say no, and we do encourage our agencies to think about who we are as a culture when you bring forward candidates to us, because we don't like to say no, but we do. And the other example is we had a great candidate we wanted to hire in one of our workplace assistant roles at a branch. And we had to say no because the person was in a wheelchair, and very recently, for safety reasons, because of the location of the branch, we had to turn off the access, disability access to the back door. So we actually weren't able at that point to hire a person in the wheelchair. And we'd gone through the whole process of interviewing folks, and the one we really appreciated was the person in the wheelchair, and then realized we couldn't accommodate because of the physical environment, at least not today, and we need to change that. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Well, maybe I could address the last part of it. With respect to the OASIS coordinator program at Enbridge, we have 6 that are doing that work now, and we realize that that's 6 employees, that it doesn't cover all the work that we need to do with respect to hiring people with disabilities. There's many more out there, and as Keith said, those are the full spectrum of disabilities as well. We need to make people feel comfortable within Enbridge and make sure that we have an inclusive workplace to welcome people with disabilities into it. So I think that what the OASIS coordinator program, besides the merit of it itself, has done for Enbridge and for the diversity team is to open up that space in terms of talking with colleagues and leaders around hiring people with disabilities and getting them to think carefully and unpacking the idea of job requirements, even unpacking the idea of fit a little bit. So that has been kind of our wedge into thinking more positively about our workplace and inclusive practice.
We got a question over here. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm speaking from personal experience and professional experience. My husband had a stroke a couple of years ago, and something that we've talked about extensively is that there are challenges when your disability is hidden. And by that I mean his recovery has been remarkable. He has gone out to his very best of ability and to seek for work, or to look for work. But he's unsure of whether he should reveal this very traumatic incident in his life. And he's done both. And in one instance, or several instances, that just was met with a non-starter. And in other situations, it was met with, some curiosity. But largely, and this is true of many employers, there's they're not sure how to react. And so he's gone with the not saying anything, which I think is not great either. My question to all of you, and whoever wishes to respond, is what do you think about people with hidden disabilities in terms of their honesty, their interaction with you? How do you envision the conversation should go at the interview scenario? I'd really appreciate your answer.
I'll start off, because that's a great question as well, a great example, because the hidden disabilities that's one of the challenges we face as employers. And I would encourage declaration. Give us the chance to accommodate. But I can't deny there is risk. There is certainly that risk of even supervisors. They're not fully trained to understand or and some would say, I don't know how to handle this, and that's where it's incumbent upon us as employers to help train our supervisors, to help them have a better understanding of their existing employees, because it is that hidden need. Sometimes you assume, something's wrong, it's not good, and we end up to a bad conclusion. We would much prefer to give us a chance to accommodate, and let's get a good conclusion out of all of this, because again, they have talent, and retention is such a huge issue these days. That from my perspective, we'd certainly like a declaration, and let's work together to resolve it for the good of both parties.
I would agree with Keith on that they give us the opportunity to know what's happening. On a bit of advice, I would say we're still in a place where it's right time, right place. It's almost got to be timing to be perfect to do it in some ways. We're all so busy. And my suggestion would be to do a little more research on the companies that you're applying to, and to research a little bit what kind of company it is, what their backgrounds are. And you'll find probably better success that way, going for the interview process. But I totally agree with being upfront with it. It's a much better way to go. It's going to be a better success for you in the end. But I think we're still in a place with people with disabilities, especially hidden disabilities, where it's right time, right place. Everything's got to be right, and hopefully, at the instance, it'll work really well. And working with the right company, I think you'll find success.
Go ahead, over here.
Hi. First, I want to congratulate Enbridge in their Alberta Business Award for their diversity. So congratulations. Second of all, I'm just wondering if service providers like AACL had approached you and introduced the idea of diversity, or if you actually were able to go out and find the service providers to support you in your dream or your vision to diversify your workplace.
Well, a couple of things happened at once. Enbridge decided to create the position of diversity manager to work in the full range of diversity and inclusion. At the same time, we had a Rotarian colleague that was was facilitating that introduction to AACL. And at the same time, we've been thinking about the OASIS coordinator position, starting to sort of brainstorm around it, because one of the colleagues in that department had a brother with a disability and was thinking that this could be some work that could be done. So there was sort of a perfect storm of a bunch of combinations, and it was the right time in terms of thinking through our strategic approach to diversity and inclusion at Enbridge to have that program come on board. And it happened actually, I think, very quickly and very successfully. So it just seemed like a matter of great timing, but I'm pretty confident that we would have been able to have had that kind of partnership with AACL and others as we move forward, because this is part of our mandate now within that program.
Yeah, I'll just add the comment as well. For us, it was having a champion in our office. One of our managers had a personal connection with AACL, and so it was him working with AACL that came up with the idea of finding the needs within our office. I'll be honest, without that connection, I don't think I'd be up here today talking about this story, because it's not like we were out searching. It was just through that relationship building that it all came about. And again, because of that relationship that was built, we got some early successes, and from there it's grown.
If you think about somebody like Joey Moss, it wasn't like the Oilers were going out looking for somebody with a disability to fill that role. Wayne Gretzky came up, he knew him, and he championed him, and who's going to say no to Wayne? We have a question from our webcast, so let's go to mic number 4, and someone could read that for us.
Yes, this comes from Kevin. What opportunities and challenges do panel members see in not only hiring people with disabilities, but in having people move horizontally or vertically through their organizations?
Yeah, I'd like to share some ATB stories on that front. That's another great question. We at ATB are getting much better now at understanding which roles that we have that will lend themselves well to certainly visible disabilities. That's point number 1, and I think when you do that as an organization, and we think about our customer contact center, so 300 to 400 folks strong lends itself very well from working from home or working in any environment, no matter where you are. So we're well aware of that. But there's other areas in a financial institution, example in the IT world, in the data entry world, which we haven't quite capitalized on yet. So I think as an organization, we are sort of doing that research and audit across our base to say which roles lend themselves well. And then we haven't got to the point yet of being able to do lateral moves. We're certainly very focused on our workplace assistant roles and our customer contact center roles, and we need to do more work beyond that. In the non-visible disability space, we're doing a great job at, I think we're doing a great job at creating the culture and the environment for the lady that came up and spoke about her husband, for him to actually feel comfortable in declaring. You have to build a culture of trust, I think, before we all want you to declare, but unless you feel comfortable, I don't think you can easily do that. In June is our Not Myself Today campaign month, where we run our leaders and our team members through what it's like to have a mental disability, what that might entail, how to identify it as a leader, and how to support individuals through that process. And the Not Myself campaign is really dedicated to non-visible concerns and disabilities you just don't obviously see. So those are the sorts of things I think we could do to help identify before you think about lateral moves.
Okay. Question there? Yep.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
I'm visually impaired, so I just wanted to. My name is Ryan Nealon. I'm a student at Grant MacEwan through the Campus Connections program. It's a partnership with Grant MacEwan and AACL for inclusive education. I've got 2 big questions, well 3 actually, I'll make it very quick. One is I'm a student that's taking business with an interest in public relations. Have you ever hired somebody for more than just a, I don't know, remedial position or something a little more substantive when it comes to hiring? Secondly, and this question is for the entire panel. All the questions are for the entire panel. Secondly, there is an issue in our population when it comes to, in my view, reasonable pay for work. Have you found that, maybe this was a question for Premier Hancock, but when you hire somebody with a disability and they've worked for you for a number of years, do you find it difficult to properly financially reimburse them because of challenges around AISH or disability pension benefits? And thirdly, how do you find working within that environment when it comes to ensuring that the individual is insured and has the same rights as any other employer or employee when it comes to receiving benefits? Thank you.
All right, let's start with maybe the first question, which is a good question about a substantive job as compared to a job that would be non-substantive.
That's one thing we've discussed in the Employer Council is about aiming higher for people with disabilities. You know, a lot of time that we get criticized for looking at the lowest common denominator for everyone to get a job there. And I think what we've seen on the council is so much potential for people to do more. That's something personally that I've seen through this experience. And I think through our agencies, I think that they play a big role in this, is to aim higher for people that have more the talent to do those jobs that are more substantial. They can help, they can be better earners, they can do more in their employment with different organizations. Because sometimes I think we fall short of doing that. I think that's something where we can really make the biggest move in this effort.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We do have people with disabilities in Enbridge because we do understand and audit the designated groups in Enbridge. So we know we have people with disabilities and they're integrated into the workforce, have the same kinds of promotion opportunities, pay, benefits, and so on. But I agree that that we need to really, again, think about the full spectrum of disabilities and make sure that the workplaces are able to both recognize talent, accommodate it, and then give people the opportunity to flourish like we give everybody else within our companies. So yeah, I think that's a really good area to be thinking about.
And I think the second question is about basically that awareness that if somebody is on AISH or another disability pension or something, is that something that you have to be aware of, and with their compensation may change things for them in that way? So it certainly sounds like that's something that an employer would have to know about, right?
I'll admit that it's never come up within our employment of our staff. For us, it has been equal pay. They get paid when any able-bodied person would get paid in that role. Frankly, if we didn't, I'd probably have a revolt of their colleagues around them because they would expect nothing less as well.
And I echo that. Our workplace assistants today that are less than full-time but have the same wage structure as any other individual that works at ATB. It's exactly the same. We don't differentiate.
And I think the third question is more about going forward. Once you've been in a job, you know, is there an opportunity for advancement, for higher pay, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that because it was pleasantly surprised. I will admit, my own, had I slotted some of these staff into, okay, this is what they're going to be doing for the rest of their lives. We've had great career development in these staff where, yeah, one, it was, in my mind, of manual photocopying, which, by the way, is saving us tons of money because now we don't need to pay a lot of money to dead store paper items. They're getting stored digitally, so there's a real benefit to us. But now he's getting trained on database entry, and we're the ones initiating that development for him. So that's been a great surprise in as far as the advancement that their supervisors want to see and that they themselves want to see as well.
Yeah, I think important. They push themselves too. We see that. They create those opportunities, like we said before. And I think, like he said, someone's doing this, they start seeing what everyone else is doing, and they want to push themselves into that position. And as long as we're open to that, and that's where we have to really be open, is to say, yeah, hey, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. And I've been pushed to that level. Keith asked me a couple of questions earlier on the council about what I've done with some certain employees with certain disabilities, and it made me think about opportunities that I could move forward with within our organization that I didn't think of before.
I think one of the areas that this has been the most developmental for in Enbridge, the most transformative, is being nimble about your employees, be able to understand what it is employees need to be able to flourish. So that is the whole range of disabilities and the whole range of the ways in which we accommodate them. And I think Minister Hancock alluded to it earlier, that we all bring something unique in terms of our abilities to the workplace, and that we need to be nimble workplaces in order to be able to capitalize on the strength of all our employees.
I think the fourth question, which was unsaid, is does anybody need a PR guy? See what I can do. All right. Question over here.
Good morning. My name is Ralph Helder. I represent an agency called Blue Heron Support Services in rural Alberta in Barrhead. And first off, let me just commend each of you for making accommodations in your workplace to allow for the diversity of your workforce. But there's another invisible challenge, and I don't know if any of you have had to face that. In rural Alberta, it's transportation to the work site, and we're really challenged with that in rural Alberta.
Yeah.
If I can just, because no, I can't speak to that directly, but from the advisory council, it's been great to have one gentleman, Gary, I think from the Barrhead area, as well, who has spoken to that very issue about not just transportation challenges, but challenges overall within the rural context of employing people with disabilities. And it's got us thinking a lot. I don't know where it will go on that day, but it's great to have that voice on the table representing that rural challenge.
I think in the end that's going to have to be a government fix somehow with transportation. I think that's not something that we can put that on our employers. It's a very costly thing. I think it's something we can help with and be part of it. But I think the government in the end is going to have to step up on that issue to find that transportation, how we're going to do it. Because I think it's something we've talked about before. I think it's a big important issue out in the rural area for sure.
Let's go over here now.
Thank you. You know, it was very surreal for me this morning hearing Premier Hancock reference my son's example as a success story, because as a parent, we're just down in the trenches, we're fighting the fight, don't realize where we're getting to and how big of a deal it is. When he mentioned about my son's work experience coordinator begging the store owner to take on my son, the dynamics behind that was she was dreading phoning me the next day to have to tell me that the charity that we were trying to get my son to be able to volunteer at had decided, in their own context, irrespective of any advice that we were providing from all of our experts and stuff, they had decided that it wasn't an appropriate workplace for my son. So she had stopped just to get groceries at the Save-On Foods in her neighborhood, which incidentally is about 10.5 kilometers from my house, and I drive right by the Save-On right across the street from my place, to get my son to a place where he could be supported in the workplace, so he can have time to grow into his own role there. And I was talking with the store manager, and he said, had we imposed their duty to accommodate, had we insisted on my son's rights, he never would have made it past his probationary period. He certainly would not have been able to spend the 150 hours that it took for him to get up to job proficiency before he could be considered for employment, and he definitely wouldn't be named their Employee of the Year after just a year of paid employment. So my questions are twofold. First of all, how do we get over that fear factor that is there? And it's not that the people at the charity were bad people, it's that they genuinely were concerned for my son's well-being. And from their lens, they were thinking that we can't support this person in the workplace. And that brings me to my second question. What do we need to do to be able to support children or adults that are integrating into the workplace so that that is a supportive transition for them? In mountain climbing, there's a saying that says amateurs celebrate at the top of the mountain, because the professionals know that the most dangerous part of the journey is getting back down safely. And that is, so if we put those questions, just anyone on the panel would be fine.
Well, and that's going to be our last question because we have run out of time, but I'll get you to answer quickly if you can.
Yeah, for sure. What comes to mind immediately for me is connections, the word connections. So in order to be the place to work that we want to be and are in Alberta, we definitely rely on connections both into the community and out. So when you have that passionate one person that's introducing us to individuals with visible and non-visible disabilities, we rely on that. We also have a team member base that is very wide open. So many of our connections come internally. And a recent one, a gentleman that is visually impaired, and one of our team members introduced us, and we're looking at a position for him in the customer contact center. So it is the connections and someone being very passionate about that I think leapfrogs you past the fear. It leapfrogs you past the fear. And the other thing, and I've talked about our recruiters before, is asking the right questions. So when we have a person that wants to work in one of our branches and that person cannot hear fully, it's the question of what do you need to be one of our branch people? And the answer is simply just a sign that says I read lips, and put that up there. It costs less than $5. So it's like the question, ask the question, and being inclusive and wide open to do that as an organization.
Well, I have to say that there's two things that we can do, one of which is practical adjustments to our physical workspaces, but the other more important thing to do is the attitudinal adjustments with our colleagues, and that's where we need our community partners and our peers and colleagues in other businesses and sectors to learn about the models that they can see. There's something that's powerful as a model that works, and people can see that it works. And I think, you know, because I'm a teacher by background, that I used to say to student teachers when I worked with them, if you as a teacher can work with the kid that's struggling the most, that has the greatest challenges in that classroom, be a really successful teacher, really get them across the finish line, really raise the bar for them, you're going to be a better teacher for every kid in that classroom. And I think that's what sort of our philosophy is at Enbridge. We can, you know, really be nimble and really welcome everybody into the workplace, even no matter what challenges they have, and we're going to be a better employer for everybody.
All right, I'm going to have to end it there. I think this panel could go on for a couple of days, as a matter of fact. Wonderful panelists. I want to thank you all for coming up and telling these stories. Really appreciate it.